Hi kids, I'm really excited to tell you this story. I've been thinking about it for quite a while, and this is a perfect time for me to tell it to you. But unlike watching a movie where you get to see all the visual images as you look at the screen, when I read you a story it's a bit different. You have to use your imagination to picture all the things and people that I'm describing. So I need you to turn your imagination on right now. Got it? Okay, great. So here we go. In any other town, this would probably just be another boring spring day. But in this particularly small town just outside of Enumclaw... Wait a minute. Enumclaw? Really? Who names a town Enumclaw? Well, it turns out that Enumclaw is Indian for Town of Evil Spirits. On second thought, given the choice between the two, I guess Enumclaw isn't so bad after all. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, because like I said, this story takes place in a town just outside of Enumclaw. And, as I was saying, this would probably just be another boring spring day if it wasn't for the Wonder Kids. Who are the Wonder Kids, you ask? Well, they're kids just like me and you. Okay, maybe not just like me, but like you. And they each have something very special about them, just like you have something very special about you. You probably have not thought much about what might be special about you. Perhaps as you hear this story about the Wonder Kids, you might start thinking about the ways in which God made you special. So let me introduce you to them. First, there is Grace. Now, Grace likes computers, and not just a little, but a lot. Now, when you hear someone say they like computers, you might be inclined to think computer games. But for Grace, that could be no further from the truth. She doesn't like playing computer games. She likes writing computer games. She lives, thinks, eats, and breathes computers. And she's very good at it. And then there's Katie. I'll give you a clue about Katie. Her favorite show is The Absent-Minded Professor. Hold on a minute. The clue doesn't help because you haven't seen the movie? Well, shame on your mom and dad. Next time they ask you what show you want to watch, you tell them The Absent-Minded Professor. And not that newfangled one in color. The original, in glorious black and white, starring none other than Fred MacMurray. But I guess you can't do it right now, so I'll just have to tell you. She likes chemistry. Give her a glass jar, some dry ice, and some juice, and she'll serve you up soda pop faster than you can say, "Look out, it's going to explode!" Which is something you find yourself saying a lot if you hang out with Katie. And finally, we have Christopher. Christopher was born with a screwdriver in one hand and a wrench in the other. Now, sometimes you think you could almost hear the gears in his mind turning as he figured out how something worked, or, more often, how to fix something that didn't. I don't recommend leaving your cell phone unattended around Christopher, unless, of course, you don't mind getting it back non-functional, because he took it apart and put it back together so it would support 7G, which doesn't even exist yet. So there you go, the Wonder Kids. Now are y'all ready to see what they're up to today? Good. So am I. So here we go. Whose idea was it to take a walk outside anyway? I've got things to do, problems to solve, and I think my computer misses me, complained Grace. Oh, Grace, you'd spend all day every day in front of your computers if we didn't drag you out into the real world at least a couple times a week, said Christopher as they walked down the old country road. Besides, you don't want to become an old maid, do you? Grace shot back. Watch it, Christopher, or I'll change your birth certificate so that you'll never become old enough to drive a car. Grace could do it, too. Computers control just about everything, so there wasn't much Grace couldn't do. But Katie couldn't take it any longer. Would you, too, knock it off? I wanted to come out here and catch a breath of fresh air and listen to the birds sing, not you two arguing. It gets pretty stuffy down in the lab, and I, for one, like the outdoors. Sorry, Katie, Grace replied sincerely. Though Grace was just as content to keep herself to herself and would have been just as happy to stay inside and try out her latest computer gadget, Grace knew this was for the best. And besides, what better way to begin a new adventure than walking past Old Man McDougal's farm? Who knows? Maybe they'd get a chance to meet him after all. Not that anyone wanted to. Ask anybody in town who they'd most like to avoid, and it would be Old Man McDougal. If you happened to cross paths, you'd be lucky if all you got was a grumpy look. He seemed to be mad at everybody and everything. He was against the whole world and felt the whole world was against him. But Grace knew there was more to Old Man McDougal than what was visible on the outside, and before spring was over, she wanted to find out just what it was. Katy was the first to hear the sound of an old, tired engine trying hard to start, but to no avail. She said, "Hey, Christopher, sounds like Old Man McDougal's trying to get that old bus of his started." Christopher responded, "Yeah, I've been listening to that engine for about the last minute or so. Sounds like he could use some help. I bet you I could get it going. Let's go peek over the fence and see what he's up to." Shocked, Katy said, "Are you crazy? I'm not going anywhere near that place. If Old Man McDougal doesn't get you, his old dog Badger will." Now look who's arguing. "It's not like we're just going to waltz right in and say hello. We just want to see what you're up to," said Grace. "We?" said Katy. "What are the two of you scheming now?" Christopher was quick to point out, "It was your idea to come outside." Okay, said Katy, "but we're not going past the fence." Now, before Katy could even finish that sentence, Grace and Christopher flew by her, jumped across the ditch, and started peering over the four-board fence. "I can't see anything from here," said Grace. "Yes, but perhaps if we climbed up like this and slid down the other side like so," said Christopher as he started climbing up the fence. But what Christopher didn't know was that Old Man McDougal's dog Badger had long since discovered their little secret operation and had patiently been waiting at the corner of the house for just such a move. Unable to hold himself back any longer, Badger hurled himself forward, barking and growling for all he was worth. He hadn't made this much noise since he trapped that skunk under his owner's sofa. "Christopher!" yelled Grace. But Christopher had no chance at all to stop his downward fall. Quickly, Grace reached forward, grabbed Christopher by the shoulder, and using all her weight, she leaned back, and just as the dog began to make his final leap, Grace's efforts paid off. Tumbling backwards off the fence, both Christopher and Grace landed safely in the dirt. "Well, that was impressive," Katy said as she hovered above the two, laying on their backs. "And what do you suggest?" Grace shot back. And Katy added, pointing to an old worn-out sign, "If you two weren't in such a hurry, perhaps you would have noticed this. Beware of dog." "So what are we going to do?" Christopher asked Katy. "I was just thinking about that. Do you still have that piece of beef jerky?" Checking his pants pockets, Christopher said, "Yeah." "Give it to me. I have an idea." So Christopher dug his hands deep into his pockets until finally he pulled out an old limp-looking piece of leather and handed it over to Katy. Katy started scouring through the bushes, looking intently for something. "Aha! Just what I was looking for." Katy bent down and gently pulled several leaves from a wild wormwood tree. She also grabbed some clover and a dandelion and proceeded to grind up all three with a rock and some water from the ditch that ran alongside the road. Sitting impatiently next to the fence, Grace said, "Are you going to help us get over to that bus or just sit there and make tea?" Katy didn't even bother to respond to that comment. She had long since learned that ignoring Grace's lack of patience was the most effective thing she could do to avoid a conflict. Katy instead stayed focused on the work at hand, carefully rubbing some of her mystery mix over the piece of beef jerky she got from Christopher. Working the mushy substance into the dry, leathery jerky, Katy carefully molded it into a small, round ball. Then, as calmly as she could, Katy playfully called out, "Here, boy, Badger want a treat? Come on, boy." Now, Badger, who was just on the other side of the fence, he wanted a treat all right. "Any old arm would do, wouldn't it, boy? But I've got something special for you. Fetch!" And with that, Katy tossed the ball of jerky over the fence. Instinctively, Badger followed the strange-looking object as it rolled right past his nose. One quick sniff told Badger that this was something that belonged in his mouth. Quickly losing interest in the kids, Badger bounced on the jerky and swallowed it down whole. The effect was immediate. Badger took a step forward, started running sideways, then tumbled to the ground in a daze. Seconds later, he was sound asleep. "Well, that takes care of that," boasted Katie. "Katie Jane Smith, you better not have killed that dog," yelled Grace. "Oh, come on. You know better than that. Badger just had a taste of my sleepy time tea, doggy flavored. I'm not exactly sure how long it will last, so whatever you two are going to do, you better do it now." Jumping to his feet, Christopher exclaimed, "Come on, let's go." And with that, the three kids scampered over the fence and ran over to the bus. Once at the bus, Christopher said, "Katie, you stand over by the garage and keep an eye out for old man McDougal. Any sign of him, then give Grace and I a signal." Katie did what Christopher asked and carefully made her way over to the corner of the garage. Christopher made a quick assessment of the tools strewn around the bottom of the bus. Grabbing several, he laid on his back in the dirt and scooted underneath the bus. In no time, he had removed several of the spark plugs and examined them closely. His mechanical mind began working. Now, remember that churning sound I said you could hear? Well, it was full volume now. To Christopher, this was child's play. At age 3, he figured out how a go-kart worked. Unfortunately, his driving skills didn't quite match, but the police officer was quite understanding. By the time he was 6, his coordination had begun to catch up with his mental aptitude, and he would spend hours, if not days, out in the garage. By the time he was 8, he had constructed an elevator out of some old wooden crates and a lawnmower engine and a kid-size hovercraft from a broken vacuum cleaner and a Ferris wheel from some old metal pipes and a clothes dryer engine. This bus was right up his alley, and after making a few adjustments to the spark plug, he started screwing them back into place. That should just about do it, Christopher thought. Reaching his hand out from underneath the bus, Christopher said to Grace, "Grace, take the keys. Get up into the driver's seat." Grace picked up the keys and made her way into the bus. Meanwhile, over near the garage, Katie thought she heard some commotion coming from inside the house. She leaned around the corner to get a better look, when suddenly the front door of the house sprung open, and out came none other than old man McDougal. Now, Katie knew she had to signal Grace and Christopher, and she also simultaneously realized the flaw in their plan. They never said what that signal should be. Oh well, no time to figure that out now. Katie turned to the bus and yelled, "Grace! Christopher! Hurry up! He's coming!" Katie then tried to move back behind the garage, but it was too late. Reaching down and picking up his pitchfork, old man McDougal hollered, "Hey, what in tarnation are you doing on my property?" Katie didn't waste any time running back over to the bus. Something about safety and numbers triggered in her mind. Reaching the bus, she told the friends, "He's definitely coming this way, and I think he picked up a pitchfork. We got to get out of here now." Still under the bus, Grace yelled out, "Come on, Christopher, get out from there." "Just one last adjustment. I've almost got it. Got it. Now we can go." Christopher slid out from underneath the bus and was quickly pulled to his feet by Katie and Grace. As old man McDougal made his way towards the bus, the kids took off running as fast as they could, heading right towards the fence. But directly in their path stood Badger. The jerky ball had worn off. Grace yelled, "Quick, this way," and pointed to a row of old willow trees just to the right of the fence. Changing directions, they ran under the trees and were quickly engulfed in long, droopy willow branches. Judging by their size, these trees must be at least 100 years old, Katie thought. Some of the branches were as thick as her waist. Smaller branches forked off in all directions, forming a huge canopy that completely surrounded them. "Through here," said Grace, pointing to a small fence. "Wait!" yelled Christopher. "That fence is electric." He tossed a branch on it, and sparks flew. "Well, you can't get shocked if you're not touching the ground," Katie said. "Jump between the electric strands, and you'll be okay," she ordered. "Oh, I'm not jumping through that," Grace said with an alarmed voice. But Katie didn't hesitate. She jumped right between the wires and landed in the grass on the other side. Christopher followed right behind her. "Come on, Grace, jump!" they both yelled. Grace could hear old man McDougal approaching, and she had no intentions of finding out what he was going to do with that pitchfork. With Badger just yards away and now running at full speed, Grace made her decision. Running towards the fence, she bent over and dove head first between the wires. Crashing to the ground on the other side, she was met by Katie and Christopher. "You did it!" Christopher cried. "Now let's get out of here." Down the street they ran, as fast as they could go. Whew, Old Man McDougal and his dog Badger just weren't fast enough. By the time they reached the fence, the Wonder Kids were far enough away that pursuing them further would be useless. Plus, Badger just caught a whiff of that jerky and decided to go sniff the ground and see if he could find some remaining scraps. Old Man McDougal began to grumble. "Can't a man get any privacy anymore? Hoodlums running loose everywhere. Up to no good, I tell you. They'd steal you blind if you didn't keep your eye out for 'em. Well, Badger, I better make sure they didn't steal anything from the bus. Come on, boy," he said as he motioned for Badger to come join him on his investigation. Old Man McDougal swung open the bus door and took a peek inside. I don't see anything missing." It was then that he noticed the keys in the ignition. "Aha! Trying to steal my bus, huh?" He then began to chuckle. "This old war horse hasn't run for, how long has it been?" Old Man McDougal briefly lost himself in thought. "Oh, yeah, I remember. That's been how long ago? 10 years? Maybe 20? Old Man McDougal's eyes began to moisten as he let his mind wander back. He sat down in the driver's seat for a moment as the memories from long ago filled his mind. "That was a long time ago," he whispered as he reached down and turned the key. Vroom! The bus engine rumbled to life as smoke bellowed out the back. "Hey, what in the world? How can this be?" stuttered Old Man McDougal as he tried to comprehend what just happened. He had sat in this very spot no more than 15 minutes ago and turned this key who knows how many times with no success. He had then conceded to the fact that this bus was not going to start, at least not without the help of a professional mechanic. It was then that he remembered what brought him here, those pesky kids. Looking towards the road where they had made their escape, he began to wonder. They had been over at the bus. Maybe they were just going to... No, he shook his head. That's a crazy thought. Makes no sense. No sense at all. No sense at all. Just a gang of hoodlums. Right, Badger? Old Man McDougal eased his foot down on the bus pedal several times and listened to the smooth rumble of the engine. Then a glimpse of a smile came across his face as he shook his head. Crazy thought, he mumbled. Crazy thought. Katie, Grace, and Christopher could hear the sound of the bus off in the distance. "Mission accomplished and job well done," stated Katie, and with that, they gave a group high five. Now, later that night, as the kids got ready for bed, Grace couldn't get the thought of Old Man McDougal out of her mind. Why does he live there all by himself? Other than Badger, he doesn't seem to have a friend in the world. As she ended her nighttime prayer, she closed with this. "And God, how can I help Mr. McDougal? Is there a way? And if there is, help me find it. In Jesus' name I pray, amen." And with that, nighttime fell across the sleepy little town just outside of Enumclaw. I hope they sleep well, because when a prayer is asked in accordance to God's will, then get ready. An adventure is about to begin. And that is the end of Chapter 1. Well, I hope you liked the story, and maybe you could give me some words of encouragement to write Chapter 2. Better yet, maybe as you go to sleep tonight, you'll ask yourself, how has God made me special? Sometimes it's hard to figure out on your own, so ask your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or another friend you spend a lot of time with, but find it. And when you do, ask yourself, how can God use that to help me help others? Just like the Wonder Kids did. Okay, kids, I hope you have a nice evening, and we'll chat again soon. Good night.